Have you ever desired more compassion in your life? Whether that's in the form of what you receive for others, that sometimes you have unkind words thrown at you, or how can you give more compassion to others, especially when you're in kind of that hard, callous place of life? Or how do we give compassion when we see things like on the news, when there are tragedies around us? How can we cultivate compassion in those places? How do we receive it and give it in ways that really build up each other's lives? As we're thinking about this, the Apostle Paul, in the letter to the Philippians, he actually gives some indication as to how we can do this. And he's writing that letter from prison. So he is in a hard, difficult, unpleasant, unkind, what we would say a callous place in life. And he is writing to the Philippians, trying to give them encouragement and trying to give them hope. He actually talks about compassion. And so as we look at it, to think about those times where we struggle with the compassion that we're giving, or when we are struggling with receiving it from others. So Philippians chapter 1, verses 6 through 10. I'm sure about this. The one who started a good work in you will stay with you to complete the job by the day of Christ Jesus. I have good reason to think this way about all of you because I keep you in my heart. You are all my partners in God's grace, both during my time in prison and in the defense and support of the gospel. God is my witness that I feel affection for all of you with the compassion of Christ Jesus. This is my prayer, that your love might become even more and more rich with knowledge and all kinds of insight. I pray this so that you will be able to decide what really matters, and so you will be sincere and blameless on the day of Christ. Notice how Paul takes the initiative to focus on others. So he is focusing his compassion, his love on other people around him, that he's kind of getting outside of his head of not just focusing on the things that are happening to him, but instead, okay, how can I cultivate that for someone else? And so when we're in those places, when we're feeling like, I need more compassion in my life, I need more, how do we begin to think outside of ourselves and going, wait a minute, how can I create compassion? How can I cultivate that outside of? That it's not just, it begins with the prayer, it begins with that conversation with God, but it turns it into action. And so if we're thinking about what's happened, the tragedy at MSU or in Nashville this week, if we're thinking about on that scale, how do I cultivate compassion in my own life? Here are some things to think about that we can apply in a multitude of ways. So this kind of line of thinking, especially if focused on the tragedies, if we think that the problem is a heart problem, then how are we choosing to partner with organizations? How are we choosing to partner with organizations that are focused on changing hearts and lives? And who are we inviting along on that journey? If we think it's a legislative problem, then what organizations are we working with, and have we called our state reps or U.S. Congress reps? So thinking through each of these things. If we think it's a mental health problem, then what organizations are we partnering with that can help with services in our community, and how do we make known those services that are available? If we think that this is a parenting issue, then how are we partnering with organizations that are encouraging and being supportive of parents in this world? If we think that this is a safety issue, then how are we participating with organizations that are teaching and promoting safe practices? If we think that this is an issue of being disconnected, what organizations are we partnering with that are all about bringing people together? So notice what we did. We go, okay, what is the issue here? What do we perceive as the issue? Okay, well then now how can I cultivate? How can I go out? And what the great thing about partnering with organizations and others and Paul makes this very clear, is that we are not alone with cultivating, creating, living out the compassion of Christ. That we get to invite people into that space, and that the moment we think it's not happening, or we recognize an area of this world or of our lives where there isn't enough compassion, it's on us to create it and not to wait for someone else to do it. And so when we're thinking through that, when we're kind of feeling that sense of the world needs more compassion, we have to ask ourselves, what are we willing to do? Because that's where it begins. And Paul is encouraging the people of Philippi to live into that compassion, to feel that love, but also to live it out and to share it with one another. And so as you feel, as you experience, as you are trying to figure out how to create more compassion in this world, what are the things you will choose to do today with others to make it happen? May compassion surround you and be with you and lift you up this day. Have a good one.